Hey there, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I'm glad you stopped by. Let's learn about how to grow tomato plants in pots. Okay, everybody loves a good vine-ripened tomato. These are some I bought from the store. They are actually quite delicious. They're called Campari tomatoes, and these are greenhouse-grown tomatoes, and they're actually quite delicious, but they don't compare to a tomato plant that you grow your own by yourself, that you grow yourself in either a garden or in a pot. And so there's nothing like that fresh tomato taste. So I'm going to step you through all the different steps of how to grow tomatoes in a pot in case you don't have a big garden or you're just starting out or you just live in an apartment, you want to grow some tomatoes on your balcony. Let's learn how. Let's talk about the benefits of growing your own tomatoes. Number one is you can grow all kinds of varieties. I've got here a black Krim, a couple of Romas, a Thorburns terracotta. I've got a white tomato. Have you ever seen a white tomato, a white cherry tomato from Seeds for Generations? Got some Romas from Seeds for Generations. By the way, if you want to support our channel, go buy seeds at my link, Seeds for Generations, great family business. Anyway, you could grow all kinds of varieties and you can find your favorites. You can grow varieties that are custom tailored and bred to work in your area. Right here in zone 9B, it gets hot, so I have to choose varieties that grow in my heat. And that's an important factor when you're deciding to grow tomatoes is when do you start them? Well, typically you start them in the spring and they grow until, in my area, until it gets hot in the summer. Now, if you live more north of me in some of the northern zones, you probably can grow tomatoes all through the summer, but here, I've got to get my tomatoes out in spring. Tomato plants only, as a rule, tomato plants will be viable in temperatures that are from about 70, 75 degrees at night. If it's hotter than that at night, then the pollen's not going to necessarily be viable. And during the days, if it's over about 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, the pollen's not going to be as good, as viable. So you want that window in the springtime when your pollen will be viable. Some tomatoes obviously buck the system and do fine. If you live in cold areas, you want to get tomatoes that are a little more cold hardy. And a lot of those have to do, they have Russian names or they come from Crimean stock. You know, the black Krim, that's a Crimean tomato. That does better north, it doesn't do well here. Down here in the south, more varieties like Everglades or Carbon or Juliet, they do well here. So you want to look on your seed packets and make sure you're getting a variety that can tolerate the heat if you live in the subtropics like me, or it's more of a temperate variety if you live up north. So that's the first thing, temperature, and make sure you're planting at the right time. Don't start tomatoes in the middle of summer. They're probably not going to do well. And if you live up north, don't try to grow them over the winter outdoors. Well, we're talking about growing in pots. What do we want to get in terms of a pot? Will something like this work? I think it will. Let's talk about sizes. Now, I'll be growing tomatoes in these pots. I've grown tomatoes in these pots before. These are about, they hold about 10, 15 gallons of soil. This is a number 7 tall nursery pot. I'm going to grow in this one. This is about equal to a 5-gallon bucket. This is the smallest I would go for tomatoes, unless I've got a miniature or a dwarfing variety, because the more soil you have, the more success you're going to have with your plant. Think about this. Your tomato plants, like these here, they're going to get really tall, especially if they're indeterminate varieties. They will grow much taller than you if you allow them. And you're going to need to put some sort of a support, like this tomato cage, in your pot. If this is filled with tomato plant, trust me, these things will tump over and they'll fall over in high wind. So the bigger the pot and the more soil you have, the more stable your plant's going to be. And it gives it more opportunity for root growth. So the smallest I would go as a rule of thumb is a 5-gallon bucket, no smaller, unless you have a dwarfing variety. So I've got this number 7 nursery pot. It's 5 gallons. Let's fill it up. Let's talk about what kind of soil to use. It's very important when you grow plants in pots to have a potting mix. Buy a soil bag that says potting mix or potting soil. Buy something specifically for growing in containers. The reason is you don't want to use like dirt from your garden. You don't want to use topsoil. You don't want to use stuff that's dense because you want this to drain well. You don't want water pooling up and gathering around the roots of your plant, or your plant's roots are going to rot. So you want this stuff that has a lot of organic material in it that drains well. And I did an experiment in a previous video to show how that drainage works. And let's do that experiment again. Here are 2 containers. This one is filled with topsoil straight out of a bag. This one is filled with the potting soil that we're going to use, also straight out of a bag. Potting soil specifically made for containers, topsoil, really just useful for filling low spots in your yard. And I'm going to pour some water into both of these. Move, Phoebe. And see how quickly the water drains. You can see that the topsoil is draining, but not real quick. But you can see that the potting soil, the potting mix, drains pretty quickly. This holds on to water. It's dense, it's hard, it's heavy, it's like cement. You can see sand coming out the bottom. Yeah, you don't want that in your container. This is just going to hold on to water, and it's not going to let any air circulate in that soil. While this is coarse and it drains quickly, you see there's no sand coming out, there's no silt. This is very fine, it's going to choke your roots. This is nice and, well, it's nice and perfect for pots. Yeah, that's heavy, man. It's like a block of concrete. So I'm just going to get into my bag of potting mix and just simply fill up my pot. Like I said, the more soil you have in your pot, the happier your tomato plant will be. All right. We have our potting soil. I'm just going to put potting soil right into my bucket here. Some folks put rocks down on the bottom if you want to kind of keep the holes from plugging up, but I find they don't plug up. So let's just fill it up. It's another important fact. It's another important factor. Your bucket or your container needs to have drainage holes. If it doesn't have drainage holes, drill some in there. Drill them down near the bottom. And if your container is going to sit on concrete and it's a flat bottom container, it's often good to put holes on the sides down near the bottom so that that water will drain. Now I'm going to fill this up, but I'm going to leave a few inches near the top available for mulching later. I want to be able to mulch my pot. Mulch helps keep moisture in, but not so much moisture that your plants are getting waterlogged. But it does help suppress weed growth as well. There we go. I'm going to leave about 3-4 inches. There we go. All right, let's go back to the patio where it's nicer. When purchasing your tomato plant starts, don't buy the big giant plants that already have fruit on them. This needs to be in a pot. This is much too large for this little cup, and it's leggy, long. This needs to go in the ground really quick. Now this is a healthy plant. It's not, it's starting to show signs of stress, but when you're buying them at the store, you don't want to buy the one. A lot of people think, wow, that one's already got fruit on it, let's buy it. The reason it has fruit on it is it's stressed, and it's trying to complete its life cycle of reproduction, of making seeds before it dies. Try to get the smaller plants. If they don't have blossoms, if they don't have these little blossoms on them, even better. Get them when they're small and young, and when they're healthy looking and little. That's the best time to get them. They're not stressed, they're happy little plants. And when you put them in the garden, they'll take off. When you put them in a bigger pot, they're going to really take off. These guys, when you stick them in a pot and they're big like this, they're just going to sigh a sigh of relief and maybe even just take a little bit of a break. They're going to focus on root growth and not so much top growth for a while. It's okay if this is all you can get, or if you're late getting your seed starts out, that's fine. Work with what you got. This is going to be a good tomato plant at some point, but you'll have a better start and a healthier chance for success if you get the smaller plants, the smaller little happy plants. Buy those. All right, we have our pot filled nearly to the top. We have our tomato start. This is one that I grew from seed, but you can certainly go to the garden center or wherever you buy your starts, and you can buy these plants, and they kind of look about like that. They come in a little pot about that size. This tomato plant really needs to get in the ground. It's looking a little bit light green, and that's not what you want with a tomato. You want a tomato plant to be dark green. If it's dark green, it's happy. If tomato plant starts turning light green or yellow, it needs fertilizer. I'm going to pinch off these lower leaves, branches, and we're going to plant this a little deep. This happens to be my single seed challenge. It is a Isis candy. It was planted as one single seed in this pot. Oh, I guess a month and a half, 2 months ago. This is my single seed challenge. Look at it. Yeah. If you're not familiar with the single seed challenge, check the link and participate. It's fun. It's a good way to appreciate plants and to appreciate the gardening community. All you have to do is dig a hole in your soil big enough for your tomato root ball. That is it. But I'm going to dig a little bit deeper because I want this tomato plant to grow roots along the stem. If you plant a tomato deeper, you have potential for more root growth where all these little hairs are on the stem. And that's just one of the neat things about tomatoes is they just want to grow for you. They're not hard. Also, if you wanted to, you could amend the soil with a slow release fertilizer. I like IV Organics. I also like Dr. Earth. IV Organics is a low dose 3-3-3 all-purpose fertilizer, and you can put some of that in the hole, and I think I'm going to do that. If you want to support our channel even more and you want a good deal, go over to ivorganics.com and enter the code Gumbo10. That's my code. You'll be helping our channel, but you'll also get a 10% discount on anything you buy there. And Charles over at IV Organics, a great guy, great company. They sell some great products, including this all-purpose fertilizer. Any fertilizer that you get for tomatoes, if you want to optimize it, you want that middle number to be about a 4, like a 2-4-2 or a 1-4-2. So put you some little fertilizer down in there and kind of mix it in. And then what we're going to do is just pop our plant out. Keep your label. You want your label to always be nearby. Just pop your plant out and drop it in the hole. There we go. Look at the roots. Not quite root bound, but a good root system. We're going to drop that in there and just cover up that stem a bit. And friends, that's all there is to planting a tomato. Now we want to water this in real well. Now, about watering, you want to water these plants almost daily when it's really hot. You want to make sure that the soil doesn't dry out. And you can test that by sticking your finger down in that soil and seeing if it's cool down beneath the surface. And if it is, you're probably okay. But I find when it gets hot, like in the summers, I have to water a plant this size, a pot this size, every single day to keep it hydrated. And then what I'll do in terms of fertilization is once a week, I'll put a very small amount of liquid fish fertilizer in my water so that I'll irrigate, and it's called fertigation when you fertilize when you irrigate. And I'll do that once a week for my potted plants and my in-ground plants. But a potted plant needs the fertilizer that you give it because it's dependent on you. Once it uses up all the nutrition in this soil, that's it. It can't range further out. It can't go forage for nutrients in the soil. It can't send its roots any further than this pot. So this little plant is dependent on you for its nutrition. So watch the plant. Make sure that your plant is dark green. If it's not dark green, give it a little bit of a well-balanced liquid fertilizer. Once you have your tomato in a pot, put it somewhere where it's going to get as much sun as possible. Tomato plants love full sun. Absolutely, they love full sun. I'm going to drop this one right here for now. And that's full sun. Now, once your tomato plant begins to get larger, you're going to have to prune it if it's an indeterminate variety. Now, you can always know if it's a determinate or indeterminate variety if you Google your variety name, and you will find the information on your variety. And whether it's in the pot or whether it's in the ground like this one here, this is a Harvest Moon variety. You're going to need to take care of pruning. I have a video on how to prune these tomatoes, and this is the one I used as an example. You want to keep the leaves from touching the soil, and you want to keep it at a height where it's not going to topple over. Other than that, there's a lot of liberty in how you can prune your tomatoes. You can do single vine, you can do double vine, you can let them sprawl. This one's getting in need of a haircut again, but we'll leave that for another video. But yeah, once you get your tomatoes to the height you want them, you want to top them. Just give them a haircut, just stop the growth there. And some people like to say that when they're small, you want to pinch the flowers so that they'll grow more buds, you know, later on, put their energy into growing a plant that has more structure for more flowers. Yeah, I don't do any of that. I just let the tomatoes grow. They want to grow for you. They're easy to grow. Now, they're also easy to get diseased, and they attract lots of pests. So be vigilant with your tomato plants. If you're growing out on a patio or something, come and visit your plant every day. Look at it, make sure there's no leaves that are looking weird, like this one's got a hole in it, like something was eating on it. You want to make sure there's a healthy plant. And if there's not a healthy plant, get online and Google your symptoms and treat your plant. But yeah, tomatoes. I've even see some fruit coming in on that plant over there. Wow, exciting. One of the most exciting plants you can grow. It's the gardener's favorite worldwide. And yeah, you can grow them in these pots. Get you a tomato plant. Hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. If you have any tomato questions, please drop a question down below and I'll try to answer you. I read all the comments. And your question might even make it to a gardening question and answer episode if I know the answer. So, hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. There it is. Pretty easy to grow tomatoes in pots. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.